Hey fellow problem solvers, Colfax Math here. This is going to be lesson 4 for a standardized math test preparation. I'm going to go over a lot of geometric topics in here. If you want more information, you could go to this webpage right here. This is a tutoring app you could download on your phone or your computer to get more help studying for the ASVAB or any standardized math test. So again, this is lesson 4. I'm going to go over area and perimeter, the amount inside a shape, and then the amount around the outside. We're going to talk about rectangles and squares, area of a triangle, volume, how much liquid you would put into an object, area and circumference of a circle, area of a triangle. You're going to find the shaded region within certain areas. We're going to look at factorials, unknown angles of triangles, finding angles of triangles, and the Pythagorean theorem. So it's going to be a pretty long video with a lot of topics covered. I'd highly recommend you have a notebook out. You take notes as I go over them. Pause the video when there are problems, do the problems before I do them, and then check your work against mine. So to start with, a rectangle is a four-sided figure. A square is a four-sided figure with 4 equal sides and 4 congruent angles that are all right. All these angles are right angles, meaning 90 degrees. A perimeter, or the perimeter, is the length around the outside. So it's this side plus that, plus that, plus that. Or if this is the length and this is the width, I could just double the width and double the length and add those two together. Or another way to look at it is you could just add the length and the width together and then multiply that by 2 to get the distance all the way around the outside. The area is how much space there is inside. So if this is a room, the perimeter would be the length of baseboard you would need to go around the room. The area is how much carpet would go on the floor of the room. Area is equal to the base times the height, or the length times the width. Here's an example right here. If this is 9 and 6, so the length is 9, the width is 6, I could add those two numbers together to get 15. And then multiply that by 2 to get 30. The units here is going to be inches. It's one-dimensional, so it's just inches. If I have 9 inches plus 6 inches, that's 15 inches, plus another 15 inches is the 30 inches. The area, on the other hand, is I'm multiplying 9 inches by 6 inches. That's going to give me 54, but I'm multiplying inch by inch to get square inches. Here's a sample problem. I'll cover up the answer. You go ahead and copy that problem down and do the work, then unpause the video and then see how I do it. So let's take a look at this. Find the length and area of the rectangle. First thing I'm going to have to do is find the length. And then once I have that length, I could do length times width to get the area. So let's take a look at the length. So the way I'm going to do that is, I don't know what this is, but I know whatever it is plus the width times 2 is going to equal that perimeter of 36. So L plus 8 times 2 is the overall perimeter. First thing I'm going to do is divide both sides by 2. That 2 is going to cancel, and that means I'm going to have length plus 8 equals 18. And then I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides to get a length of 10. Let's see if that makes sense. 10 and 8 is 18. 18 and 18 give me the 36. So that's a length all the way around the outside. Now that I know that this is a length of 10, the area is the base times the height, or the length times the width. 10 times 8 gives me an area of 80 square inches. All right, here's another problem right here. Pause the video, copy this problem down and do it, and then we'll do it when you unpause the video. Okay, first you always got to read the directions, find the width of the rectangle. Well, I'm given area, so I know length times width equals 77. So 11 times W equals 77. I'm trying to get W by itself. So the way I do that, I divide both sides of the equation by 11. 77 divided by 11 will give me 7 inches. Don't forget your units, and that kind of makes sense as well. 11 times 7 gives me that 77 square inches. Okay, here's another problem. Pause the video and knock this one out. Here we're trying to find the area and perimeter, and then let's unpause the video and then we'll go ahead and do it. So the perimeter is going to be 15 plus 12, 27, times 2, 54. That's going to be a singular dimension feet. So the length around the outside, the perimeter, is 54 feet. The area is base times height, 15 times 12, 180. Feet times feet, square feet. So those are your answers for perimeter and area. Pause the video, do this one, and then we'll go ahead and find the width. Okay, so 14 times what will give me 126? I could create an equation like that. 14W equals 126. I'm going to divide both sides by 14. 126 divided by 14 is going to be equal to 9. 14 times 9 is 126. Let me double read the problem, find the width. So it is going to be 9 feet. Again, don't forget to use your units. Okay, here's another sample problem. Copy it down, and then I'll uncover the answer and we'll go through it. Remember this plus that, 16 plus W times that 2 is going to equal that perimeter of 58. I'm going to divide both sides by 2 to get 29 is equal to 16 plus W. Subtracting 16 from both sides, I get 13. It's easy to write that in. 13 inches. If that's inches, this must all be inches. But there's a second part to the problem. Find the area of the rectangle. So the area is going to be that 16 times the 13. Might be a little too big to do in my head. I'm going to use long multiplication here. 3 times 6 is 18. Carry the 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. Placeholder, 6 and a 1. I add that up, 8. 10, carry the 1 to get 208. Again, this is going to be square inches. You could write it that way, inches with a little square on it, or you could write it as square inches that way. All right, let's talk about squares a little bit right here. Square is a four-sided figure. Four-sided figure is just a quadrilateral, quad meaning 4. It is a specific quadrilateral. It is a rectangle with a condition to it. It is a rectangle which has 4 right angles, and it is a rectangle that has 4 equal sides. So the length is always the same all the way around. So the perimeter is going to be whatever one leg is, one length is, times 4, and then the area is going to be this number squared, or the length squared. Squared just means times itself. So if I had a square with one side of 9, that would mean this side is 9 as well. So the perimeter is going to be 4 times 9 inches will give me 36 inches. And then the area, the shading on the inside of this square, is going to be 9 times itself, 9 squared, 81. Inches times inches is square inches. Okay, here's a sample problem right here. Go ahead and do this with the pause video. It is saying the area is 144. So that means that times that, length times length, has to equal 144. The reverse operation of a square is a square root. So the square root of 144, what times itself equals 144? 12 times 12 is 144. So that length is 12, and that length is 12. Find the length. So the length is going to be 12. Not the perimeter, you just need to find the length on this one. All right, here you are. Go ahead and pause the video. There's another practice problem. I have a square. It tells me it's a square, so I know all sides are 30. Find the area and perimeter. The area is going to be 30 times 30, which is going to be 3 times 3, 9, plus 2 zeros, so 900 square centimeters for the area. And then the perimeter is 30 plus 30, plus 30 plus 30, 30 times 4, 120, not feet, but this is centimeters. So this is square centimeters, and that's linear centimeters, 120 centimeters. Here's another problem. The area is 169. You need to know the square root of 169. That's kind of a tricky one. But on most of these tests, it's always going to be an integer. You know, 12 times 12 is 144. So it's a good guess to guess up 13. If you don't know 13 by 13, you can multiply it out to see it's 169. So the length of one side here is 13. This is square feet. The length is feet. All right, let's move on to triangles now. This is a right triangle. That little box in the corner is saying it has a 90-degree angle to it. There are always 2 legs in a triangle and a hypotenuse when you're talking about a right triangle. Hypotenuse will always be the longest side, and it will always be opposite the right angle. So right triangles are different class of triangles, but they're the most common kind. And no matter what triangle you have, you could always draw an altitude into it and create a right triangle. So this would be the base. This would be the height. The area of this triangle is going to be 1/2 base times height. And that kind of makes sense. Because if I were to draw a square here, I could see that the base times the height would be the area of that square, but I don't want this portion of the square or the rectangle. I only want half of it, and that's where that 1/2 comes in. So here's an example. If I have a base of 12 and a height of 8, find the area of that triangle. What's going to be base times height, 12 times 8, times that 1/2. And multiplication is commutative, so you could do it, in any order you want. You could do 1/2 times 12, which is 6, 6 times 8. So the area is going to be 1/2 times 12 times 8, and multiplication is commutative, so I could go in any order I want. 1/2 times 12 is 6, 6 times 8 is 48. I am multiplying inches by inches to get square inches. Okay, here's another problem. Pause the video and do this problem. So we got base times height, 15 times 13 times 1/2. It's a little much to keep in my head. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry the 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. Placeholder, 1 times 5. 1 times 1, I have 5, 9, 1. So the area of this rectangle right here would be 195. I don't want that whole rectangle. I only want half of it. The way I multiply by 1/2 is the same thing as dividing by 1/2. So I can multiply this by 1/2 or divide it by 2, right? 2 goes into 19 9 times to give me 18. 1, bring down the 5. 2 goes into 15 7 times to give me 14. 1 left over, so it's 97 with a remainder of 1. And I started with a 2, so this is 97.5 or 97.5 square inches. These are inches. There's another typo right there, so that's square inches. All right, here's another sample problem. Pause the video and do this one. It's a word problem. Start by drawing a picture and then reading the question really carefully and then finding the answer. Unpause the video and we'll roll through it. All right, Irene buys a table runner that is 84 inches long and 16 inches wide. So I got 16 inches. I am noting the units because a lot of times they have different units. So I got to make sure I'm in the same category here. So double tick marks are inches, as that abbreviation is for inches. Perimeter is going to be this plus this. 84 plus 16 is 100 times 2. We're talking about inches. So the perimeter is 200 inches. And then the area is going to be 84 inches times the 16 inches. You're going to multiply that out to get 1,344 inches times inches, square inches. All right, here's a good problem right here. Pause the video, knock this one out. Okay, when I read this, I'm going to do a couple things. I kind of need a picture to work with. Determine the height of a triangle. So I'm going to draw a triangle. I'm going to call that height right there. That is what I'm looking for. When I identify that there, I make less mistakes. If the area of 80 square meters and a base of 10, so that means I got a base of 10 meters and an area of 80, so that means base times height times that 1/2 is equal to 80, right? So then I'm going to just do 1/2 times 10 to get 5/8 equals 80. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 5, and I'm going to get h, my height, is equal to, what is that, 16? Let me see if that even makes sense. 16 times 10, 160, divided by 2 is 80. So that's the correct answer right here. This is actually a typo mistake right there. All right, let's talk about volume for a little bit. Volume is a three-dimensional space. It has a length this way, a height this way, and a width coming out here, coming out this way. So it's three-dimensional. So volume is going to be inches times inches times inches, or cubic inches. It's going to have a three-dimensional unit attached to it, right? Because you're going to have to multiply all sides of that box. Let me see if I can sketch it out really quick here. Right? So perimeter is the length around the bottom of it. Area is the area of the bottom of it. Volume is how much liquid would fill that box up, how much could actually go inside that box. All right, so here's an example. Find the volume of a rectangular prism. Rectangular prism just means it's a rectangular base and straight up. It's a right rectangular prism. It's going to be the length times the width times the height. all in centimeters. So 12 centimeters times 8 centimeters is going to give you 96 centimeters squared. 96 times 10 gives you the 960 times that centimeters, cubic centimeters. That cube is telling me I'm talking about volume, three-dimensional measurement here. All right, here's a sample problem. Pause the video and do this. Find the volume of that rectangular prism. And here's a trick to it when you do it. You're going to multiply all three of those numbers together. Your units are going to be inches times inches times inches, cubic inches. But the way I want to multiply them is so I can figure them out. So 25 times 2 is 50, plus that 0 is 500. 500 times 3 is 1,500, plus that 0 to give me 15,000 square inches. Again, the units are wrong. We're all in units, so it's 15,000 square inches. All right, pause the video. Here's another sample problem. What is the volume of a figure that is 7 inches by 6 inches by 8? Well, all your units are the same. That's what you're going to check. You're going to multiply that 7 by 6, 42. 42 times 8 gives you that 336. Again, this is inches, not meters. Stay with me a little longer. We're going over a couple more ideas. Circles really come up a lot in standardized test problems. Here's some definitions of a circle. This is an overall circle. It is defined as all points equidistant from a given point. That given point is the center of the circle. Outside the circle going all the way around is called a circumference. From the center point out to that circumference is a radius. And then the diameter goes across the circle, but it goes through the center. So the diameter is twice as long as the radius. So that's what this is saying here. Your radius is equal to the diameter divided by 2. Circumference is the length of line, the perimeter of a circle. It is defined as 2 times the number pi times the radius r. That Greek letter pi right there, that stands for a ratio. It is actually the ratio of circumference to diameter. It's not a variable. It's not an unknown. It is a number. A decimal approximation for that Greek letter pi is 3.14. If you're going to do a really broad round, you could round it down to 3. As a fraction, it could be 22 over 7. So circumference is equal to 2 pi r. And then the area of a circle, because now your units are going to be squared, right? Because we're talking about the carpet on the bottom of a floor, is that same number pi, radius squared. So you take that first, the radius, and then you square it, and then you multiply by that number pi. So a lot of these problems right here, you're going to use a calculator if you're looking for a decimal approximation. If you're not, you could just really look for a very broad solution, especially on a multiple choice test, and just use a 3. You can also just leave that number 3.14 as that Greek letter pi, and that's a good answer too. So let's see, here's a circle. Find the radius, circumference, and area of this circle. Well, if the diameter is 24, all the way across is 24, then the radius is half of that, 12. The circumference is 2 pi r. So you're going to take 2 times the decimal approximation of that number pi times 12, and it'll give you that number on your calculator. It's going to be a singular unit like inches. Or I could just leave this as 2 times 12, 24, times that Greek letter pi. So that's a good answer. But this is a good answer too, 24 pi. And usually on standardized tests, you're going to see it in terms of pi like that. Then the area is going to be that radius, 12 squared. Remember, you got to do exponents before multiplication. 12 squared is 144 times pi. So you could do 144 times 3.14. A lot of long multiplication and get that right there, square inches. Or you could just leave it as 144 pi square inches as well. Just as good of an answer. Standardized test, you probably see this one, or they'll expect you to round a little bit. All right, here's a sample problem. I'm trying to cover up those answers there. Go ahead and do this, and then I'll do it. Find the radius, circumference, and area. Halfway across is 16. So my radius is equal to 8. My units are centimeters. My circumference is going to be equal to 2 pi r. It's also diameter times pi. So I'm going to just call that 16 pi. It's the length around the outside of the circle. So it's a one-dimensional answer. It's going to just be centimeters. I could do 16 times 3.14 and get that 50 right there. Whoa, this It's not square feet at all. That's just actually going to be linear centimeters, 50.24 centimeters. And then the area is going to be that radius 8 squared, 8 times 8, 64 times pi, or 64 pi square centimeters. And that's your answer there. If you want to multiply that out, 64 times 3, it's pretty close. What is that, 192 or so? So you could see it's about 200 if you did the decimal approximation on a calculator or long multiplication. Here's a good problem right here. I'll cover it up. Pause the video, go ahead and do this problem. Find the area of the shaded region. Unpause the video and then watch how I go through it. So what I would do to start with on this is I would break this thing up and figure out what you could figure out. So if all the way of this side is 8, that means half of that side is going to be 4. So that means this radius right here is half of that 8, or 4 inches. So I got a radius of a circle is 4 inches. I'm going to find the area of that whole circle. Area of that circle, go back to white here. Area of that circle is pi r squared. 4 times 4 is 16 times pi. So area of that circle is 16 pi. Then area of that overall rectangle is base times height. 12 times 8 is 96. So the area of the rectangle is equal to 96 square inches. And this is square inches. So the shaded region in gray here is the difference between the two. So I'm going to do 96 minus 16 pi, area of that circle. And if I'm going to enter it on a calculator, I'm going to do 16 times 3.14 to get about 50 or so. Then 96 minus that value to get about 45 or so, 46. Or if I don't want to use a calculator and do long multiplication, if it's a multiple choice problem, the answer would probably be written like this. 96 minus 16 pi. That's a good answer. It's an exact value answer right there. All right, let me cover this answer up. Go ahead and do this problem really quick. Find the area of the shaded region of the following. It's similar, but there's a few more pieces here. Find the area of that whole circle. The radius of that circle is 5. Area of that whole circle, right, going all the way around here, is going to be 25. Right, area is pi r squared. 5 times 5, 25 times pi square inches. That's the area of the whole circle. I don't want that whole circle. I only want half of it. No, I don't. I only want a quarter of it. So I'm going to divide by 4. Keep that pi right there. 25 divided by 4 is 6 1/4 pi square inches. So that's the area of that white region there. We read the problem again, find the area of the shaded region. So I got to get this gray region here. Area of that rectangle, so area of that rectangle is base times height, 45 square inches. 45 square inches minus that area of that quarter circle. So minus the 6.25 pi square inches. You could enter that on your calculator. 6.25 times that pi. Remember, you got to do that multiplication before subtraction. Do that number right there, whatever that is, about 20. And then 45 minus that 20 should be about 25. So that would be the approximation. You could do the long multiplication if you want. You use a calculator. Or again, you could just leave it as an exact value and have it as 45 minus 6 1/4 pi. If it's a multiple choice test, it'd probably be more like that. Or it would say round to the nearest tenth. You'd use 3.1. And then your other answers would be so far away from this that you'd be able to isolate which is the correct answer. All right, moving on to a new topic, factorials. This exclamation point right there, it's called a factorial. It doesn't mean 5 with emphasis. It means 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So that's called a factorial. So 5 factorial is you start at that 5 and you multiply all the way down till 1. Interesting thing to note here, 0 factorial is actually equal to 1. 7 factorial, that just means 7 times 6 times 5 all the way down to 1. So 7 factorial is 5,040. Okay, so with that said, go ahead and do these two problems right here. The value of 4 factorial, that's one problem. And then 6 factorial, unpause the video and then watch how I do. 4 factorial, that's going to be equal to 4 times 3 12 times 2, 24 times 1, 24. That's just your answer right there. 6 factorial is going to be 6 times 5, 30 times 4, 120 times 3, 360 times 2, 720 times 1, still 720. So 6 factorial is 720. 4 factorial is 24. All right, so that's just a quick overview on factorials. Now let's take a look at some triangle problems. A couple things you need to know about any triangle. All 3 angles add up to 180. So if you got a right triangle, one of the angles are 90, then the other 2 have to add up to 90s. If 2 angles add up to 90, it's called complementary. Or if 2 angles add up to 180, it's called supplementary. All right, so what we have here is we have 2 of the 3 given angles, and it says find the value of x. That little notation is degrees, a full rotation of 360 degrees. So I got to figure out what that angle is. So I know that the angle I don't know, plus one I do, plus the other one I do, equals 180. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add 87 and 36 together, take that number and subtract it from 180 to get 57 degrees, and that's the answer. So all 3 angles add up to 180. I could figure out a third angle given 2 because I subtract those from 180. All right, here's a sample problem. Go ahead and do this problem. Unpause the video and we'll go over it. All 3 angles add up to 180. Find the value of x. Again, that little box means 90. So 90 and 40 is 130. 130 from 180 is 50. So the measure of angle x is 50 degrees. Or the other way to do it, as soon as you see that right angle, you know these 2 have to be 90. So 90 minus 40 gives you that 50. Okay, next topic, Pythagorean theorem. This is really useful equation. It sounds a little scary, but it's actually not too hard. First thing about Pythagorean theorem is it will only work in a right triangle. So if you don't see that little box there, it is not a right triangle. Pythagorean theorem won't work. However, if the Pythagorean theorem does work, then you do know it's a right triangle. So what the Pythagorean theorem says is one leg squared plus the other leg squared equals a hypotenuse squared. So one leg squared plus the other leg squared is equal to hypotenuse squared. So this one right here is called a Pythagorean triple because it works out to be integers. If one leg is 3, the other leg is 4, what is the longest side, the hypotenuse? Well, what I do there is I would take 4 and plug it in for this side, 3, plug it in for this side, then I'd square them. 4 squared is 16, 3 squared is 9. I add those 2 together to get 25. So c squared is equal to 25. To get c by itself, I take square root on both sides, and I see the hypotenuse here is 5. Sometimes in construction, you use that 3, 4, 5 triangle to prove something's perpendicular, like a fence off a house. You measure 3 feet, 4 feet, you check that hypotenuse at 5. If that works, then it is a right angle. Here's another example. Go ahead and do this problem and unpause the video and we'll do it together. So I don't know this side. Remember though, that it's important. You got to do one leg squared, a squared, plus the other leg squared, 8 squared. Thing ain't working too good there. Is equal to hypotenuse squared, 10 squared. 8 squared is 64. So 64 is equal to 100. Subtract 64 from both sides. So I get a squared is equal to 36. Square root of both sides, a is equal to 6. Little different than the other one, because the other one, the first one we did, was we were given a leg, and a leg asked for the hypotenuse. Here we're given a leg, looking for a leg, and given a hypotenuse. So the answer is 6 inches. All right, this is Colfax Math signing off right here. A lot of topics in here. Hopefully the video wasn't too long. I put a lot of time and energy into these videos. So if you're new to the channel, if you would think about subscribing, it's a great way to support me. Hit that like button. That really helps me as well. These are all the topics we went over in the video. Kind of a quick overview, but hopefully they'll help you do well on any standardized test. Thank you for watching. And if you have any questions at all, post them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.